Thank you, Madam President. I move the bill pass and speaking to that motion.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Bill 378 is the bill that would establish collective bargaining for state and local government employees. The bill, first of all, I want to talk about what this bill is not. It is not an unfunded mandate. It does not mandate that people get raises or more benefits. What it does mandate is that if local government employees organize, if they choose to organize, then local governments and different parts of state agencies are required to have a conversation. That's it. They're required to have a conversation about wages, benefits, quality of life, working conditions, etc. If they can't agree, the parties go to mediation. If they still can't agree, they can go to arbitration. However, any arbitrated agreement is subject to the approval of the funding entity. In the case of the state, that would be us. In the case of local government, that would be either the Board of Supervisors, the City Council, or the Town Council. So the arbitrated agreement is subject to the approval of the body that provides the money. If they don't got the money, there is no agreement. That's what the bill does. Now, I can get a lot more into the details if you want to talk about bargaining units and the 18 different potential bargaining units of the state and how bargaining units are formed at the local level. I can get into all that if you like. But that's basically what the bill does. I think it's important to note for the record what the Senate Finance Committee did. The biggest thing, two biggest things the Senate Finance Committee did to the bill was, number one, it basically took home health care workers, Medicaid-funded home health care workers, out of the bill. The bill as drafted created an authority for home health care workers so that the home health care workers would be, Medicaid-funded home health care workers would become employees of this authority and thus employees of the state. The Finance Committee was concerned about the fiscal impacts associated with that, so they eliminated that from the bill and mandated a study to look at that. That's the first big thing that was done. The second thing is Senate Finance Committee also said you cannot collectively bargain about health care benefits. The reason for that is that the state's health care plan applies to over 700,000 people, and trying to individually negotiate that between 400 local government units and the 18 different bargaining units of the state would create a sort of a chaotic health care plan. And so that is excluded. And by the way, the bill had previously excluded retirement benefits because retirement benefits are determined by us by statute. So that was already out of the bill. Other people have said to me, by the way, won't employees be able to strike to force people to agree? The answer to that is no, because the bill bans strikes. It still specifically prohibits strikes. So the leverage that employees could exert is mainly that of public relations. Telling local governments or the state that we really should fund these things that they've negotiated. The Senate Finance Committee also delayed the effective date to 2028. The Department of Labor and Industry says that it will take that long at least in order to write the regulations necessary to implement this. It also asked the new Public Employee Relations Board to conduct a study as to whether or not having 18 different bargaining units within the Commonwealth is really the correct number or the correct organization, or whether it ought to be more or less. They moved the transition date, I guess, to 2028 as well. Not only delayed effective date, but the transition date. So that's basically what the bill did. And I'll just say, Madam President, that what this bill will do is it will give 700,000 people who work for the government the right to collectively bargain, whether it's for local government or state government. That's 17% of the workers of this state. Right now, only about 85,000 employees have the benefit of collective bargaining, basically folks who live in Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Prince William, and Loudoun counties. I don't believe any other states have adopted the opt-in collective bargaining that we authorized back in 2021. But Madam President, I believe that whether you have the opportunity to collectively bargain should not be a function of your zip code. If you live in this state and you're a government employee, you either ought to have it or you shouldn't. And this makes sure everybody has that right. If they're able to convince their colleagues in their similar jobs that they ought to have a union, which they have to do first. So, Madam President, that's what the bill does. I hope we could pass it.
The senator has the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me clean up a few things here so make sure the record's really clear on what we're doing here. First of all, if anybody was concerned about dues being used for certain purposes, they're welcome to make an amendment to the bill. No amendment was made. I would submit that that was a strategic decision, number one. Number two, let's talk about this local fiscal impact, or alleged local fiscal impact. If you go look up the local FIS, I guess we've started doing these fiscal impact statements where we ask local governments to estimate the fiscal impact on things, and we just let local governments say whatever they feel like it. And then we just put it in writing as if it's actually true. Now, if you want to go look at the fiscal impact for Chesterfield County, which I believe is the county that the senator was referring to, is on the FIS, and you'll look it up on LIS yourself. Chesterfield County claims this is going to cost them $197 million in the first year and $200 million or $200 some million the second year. What did they base that on? Well, if you read their explanation, they said, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median weekly earnings of union workers were 20% more than non-union workers. So if we apply a 20% increase to full-time salaries, we get this number. That's where this number comes from. That's the funny math Chesterfield County threw into this conversation to try to put a poison pill in the debate. Now, if Chesterfield County wants to give a 20% raise, that's up to them. If they want to do an agreement to do that, that's their decision. I would submit I don't think they're going to do that. Now, in terms of the 2-year delay, under Virginia's regulatory process, it takes 2 years to do regulations unless we override that by statute. It's going to take 2 years to set up the structures necessary to process 400 plus bargaining units being created around the Commonwealth if they're able to organize them and get them in place to where they're even able to have a conversation. It takes time to put all that together. And I would submit that I don't even think that anyone's capable of organizing that many bargaining units that quickly. And I suspect that in many localities, the employees are not going to choose to want to be represented by a union. So again, this whole thing only starts if the employees choose to let a union represent them. Let's talk about binding. I would direct the body to look at section 40.157.17 of this bill. And on line 637 and 638 of the bill, it says that after the matter is submitted to arbitration, it says, I'm going to read it word for word, if the governing body rejects the submission of the public employer, either party may reopen negotiations. It says the governing body shall approve or reject the submission as a whole, and if they reject the submission, either party may reopen negotiations. That's not binding. That's a choice. If the governing body doesn't have the money, then they don't agree to what came out of the arbitration. That's almost what happened in Fairfax, which, by the way, is the second wealthiest county in the state. Loudoun County, by the way, is the wealthiest. And I would note that in Fairfax, what happened is, yes, there were contracts that were negotiated, and the budget went south. It didn't go south because of planned raises. It went south because the real estate market cratered. It went south because post-pandemic office building prices have gone down by about 70%. In Fairfax County, it is his fault. It is his fault. He transferred lots of competent contractors out of Northern Virginia and there's agencies that are transferring out of state. But I would submit that the value, there's buildings in Fairfax County that are now selling for 30% of their tax assessed value. And Fairfax County for years has overdeveloped commercial, underdeveloped residential to attract more jobs than houses because it benefits their it benefits the revenue and doesn't cost them as much on the expenditure side. And now those chickens are coming home to roost. But Fairfax didn't have the money, so you know what? They didn't fund the contract. And now they're back to the drawing board to renegotiate. So, Madam President, that's what happened in Fairfax. And it's not the contracts that caused the deficit. 24 states in America have collective bargaining at the government level. Virginia will make it the 25th state in the country. And I would note that states with collective bargaining rights, they have higher employee retention rates, they have better working conditions, they have higher levels of economic growth, lower levels of economic inequality. And I want to remind everybody that our public sector workers are those who are on the front lines working to protect us every day when we have natural disasters or, God forbid, another pandemic. This bill will give our public workers the ability to have a voice that they don't have right now in their working conditions and their pay and benefits. It's supported, by the way, by 68% of the public, according to a CNU poll that came out recently. We need to pass this bill.
The question is, shall Senate Bill 378 pass? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 18.
Ayes 22, noes 18. Senate Bill 378 passes.
Madam Chair, Madam President.
For what purpose does the senator from Chesapeake rise?
Haven't voted on the prevailing side by which we passed this last bill, Senate Bill 378 has to be reconsidered.
The question is, shall the vote by which Senate Bill 378 passed be reconsidered? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. The question is,
Madam President?
Senator from Eastern Fairfax.
I move the bill pass, and having previously explained the bill, I would hope we would, I would hope we would pass the bill again.
The chair requests that the senator speak for another 15 minutes about the bill. The question is, shall Senate Bill 378 pass? All in favor of that motion will record their votes aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Bill 378 passes.